What's up, everybody? Welcome back, Correlation Nation. Are you looking for some fighter breakdowns? Because you have come to the right place. All right, tonight we're going to be going over UFC Noche, and we got a banger of a card. We got 14 bouts in total. Main event: Diego Lopes going against John Silva, and yeah, this should be a really fun card. Let's get into it. And before I get into it, do yourself a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because this is the only place you need to be to get the best fighter breakdowns in the space, bar none. Okay, let's run through this. The first fight of the night, we have Rodrigo. You got me messed up if you think I'm going to try to pronounce that name, going against Daniil. Okay, so I believe this fight was rescheduled. It is a UFC, or what is it, what is that thing they do, the Ultimate Fighter? Yeah, that show's pretty dead at this point. But you have the Ultimate Fighter finalists going against each other, and this was already supposed to have happened, but it got rescheduled, so we're going to be looking at it. Let's look at the fighters. Let's see what we have. I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I did break the fighters down when this was originally scheduled, so it's a little bit kind of out of my head at this point, but I do have notes, and we're just going to go over them. Okay, so let's check these out. Rodrigo. All right, Rodrigo. This guy, here he is down here. He's a light-footed pressure striker. He has good bounce, but it's not very technical. Pawing guard, looking to throw and counter with wide power shots. He looks to clinch and wrestle. He has some takedown ability, but it isn't great. But he does seem to have some good top pressure. Scrambles pretty well. He threatens submissions, but he does seem to fade. Okay, so, I mean, all in all, again, haven't watched too much on this guy. Did watch him film enough to get the breakdown that I have of him. But anytime you're filming guys like these, I mean, if I would have watched The Ultimate Fighter, probably would have been a little bit different. And honestly, I probably should have done myself a favor and done that since it was rescheduled. But, you know, it is what it is. Let's look at his opponent on the other side. His opponent is a fairly light-footed striker. He uses measured pressure. He has snappy backside kicks. He throws to all levels. Boxing is decent. More of a counter striker. He does have a solid guard, but a bit loose. And I'll be keeping an eye on this because the way I wrote this, again, these probably need to be gone over. I'm not sure if his boxing is a bit loose or, you know, his guard's a bit loose. But nonetheless, is what it is. He has some wrestling and scrambling ability. Positionally aware. He is kind of up in the air. Not really sure about that. Good ground and pound, and cardio seems pretty solid. Won't quit on himself. I think what this comes down to is, you know, Daniil being able to kind of like compete on the feet and everything, and just outlasting. You know what I mean? I really believe that's what this comes down to. Is I think that because of the cardio, I think he can truly outlast his opponent. But there's a lot of questions with these guys, especially for me. I'll be curious to see how they size up at the face-offs, and you know what other people have to say about this fight. Because again, just to be entirely honest, didn't watch these guys on Ultimate Fighter. I only watched the film that I could see. And I just try to break them down for what they do. You know, it's skill for skill. Like, look at their tendencies. What do they want to do? How do they want to fight? Things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I come away with this that let's see. I mean, I guess, you know, there's a world that this guy could catch him in a submission early, but I think that, you know, if the fight gets past like the first round, it's just really going to start to favor Daniil, and that's what we're going to see. So I'm going to favor with Daniil in this fight. I'll be paying attention to how they pronounce their names, things like that, as you know, I watch this event, and certainly be looking to update these the breakdowns, their you know, their individual breakdowns. But I'm going to side with Daniil, and we're just going to move on to the next bout. The next bout, we have a newcomer in Alice Pereira. She will be debuting again Montserrat Rendon. Rendon's been in the UFC for a little while. I think she's had 2 or 3 fights in the UFC. Alice is young. She's a newcomer. Supposed to be maybe kind of a prospect-ish type of fighter. I'm not sure how high level. You know, I watched the film, wasn't overly impressed, and let's hop over to her. All right. So Alice Pereira, this girl is a fairly light-footed striker. She does show some bounce with a bit of footwork, but does tend to be kind of bloody. Seems to be fairly aggressive, likes to throw a flying knee. I've seen her throw this multiple times. So I do think it's something she likes to do. She looks to be a plus athlete, decent front side, high kicks, pretty unrefined striker, you know, flurries of wide punches. She will clinch. She has decent knees. Questions around her ground game, but she can show good aggression with ground and pound. And that's because sometimes she's very stagnant on the ground. She's not doing much, just trying to kind of maintain position or whatever. But then there are other times where she's a little bit more willing to let loose and show that aggressive ground and pound that she does possess. You know, all in all, I do feel like she's a very, very undeveloped fighter. But I can kind of see why maybe the UFC thinks she's a prospect. You know, she looks like she has pretty good size and length, and she's young, still developing. You know, the aggression looks good when you're fighting against lower level competition. So, like I said, I can kind of see where the UFC maybe thinks, you know, she could potentially, or she has potential. And it'll be interesting to see if she's developed any further since her last fight, but you know, I can't say I believe it's been that much, even if she has. And then when we look on the other side, we have Rendon. Let's see. All right. Rendon is a fairly light-footed pressure striker. She doesn't show much bounce, but has pretty good movement and footwork. She is fundamentally sound boxing, or has fundamentally sound boxing. Uses a high guard, decent 1-2. She does seem a bit slow. Has pretty good timing, though. Will fight with pretty good pace. So the volume's there. She just kind of keeps going. And I do kind of favor her in this bout. You know, I think there is a world where Pereira could kind of just maybe, I don't know if it'd be like outwork her, but just overwhelm her maybe with her offense. But I don't really think that's going to be super likely, because I think that Rendon's kind of got a good build for this, you know, the class. You know, she's a pretty big girl. It'd be interesting to see how they size up. But all in all, I think she's just a much more superior technical striker. And so I think that she wins this fight. You know, it's probably going to be like by decision or something. So I'm going to side with Rendon. Maybe not like the most, you know, popular pick, but I just see her as the more technical striker here, you know. And there's certainly a world, like I said, where Alice could kind of overwhelm her, maybe catch her with one of these flying knees, or, you know, we'll see how that turns out. You know, it's lower level women's MMA, so it's difficult to predict. But I think Montserrat's going to be able to just kind of weather whatever she has to throw and just land more. I think she outworks her. I think she lands a cleaner, better technical striking. That's just the way I look at it, okay? And we're going to move on to the next fight. We have Alessandro Costa going against Alden Correa. Pronunciation's probably not right on this one either, but you know, we tried, and like I said, I'll be paying attention. So Alessandro Costa going against Aldine. Let's pull up Alessandro. Oh, Costa. All right. Alessandro is a light-footed striker. He shows decent bounce. He uses measured pressure and range management. So he'll kind of force you to fight, but he'll try to maintain his own range. He has solid footwork. He's a technical striker that's explosive. Carries a high guard, nasty backside kicks, deep and low. Takedown ability looks legit and is a real aggressive offensive grappler. Does this guy fade after the first? Is he a gasser? You know, that's a kind of a concern. You know, we've seen him go long against some other guys. I think he just went long against Urseg, which is a good look for him. But, you know, you always want to see, are they the same type of fighter in the second and the third as they are in the first? Yeah, typically they're not quite the same, but, you know, if you implement a game plan like a lot of footwork, a lot of movement, bouncing around, and your whole game is predicated around that, and you're not able to do it for 2 or 3 rounds, I mean, at least 3 rounds, if it's 3 rounds, I mean, you're eventually not going to be the same fighter, and then all of a sudden you're not able to use your best tools. So, yeah, it's a real factor in these fights. So, we'll be keeping an eye on that, but let's look at his opponent. Alden is a light-footed striker with decent bounce and seemingly solid footwork. Striking looks okay. High guard, decent backside kicks, both stances. Boxing looks pretty clean, but a bit low volume. Seems to have some takedown ability where he is a methodical grappler. He's a guy that just kind of takes what the opponent gives and works towards a dominant position. Active ground and pound. And then questions around his defensive grappling. I don't know. I think this one's this one's a tough one for me. It really is. Alden looks like a pretty good prospect. You know, the fact that he's able to, you know, switch stances seemingly and, you know, throw kicks out of both stances effectively. Just well-rounded. You know, he's got a winning style for sure. Now, the problem is in this fight, and the reason it's difficult is because on the other side, Costa is also well-versed in a lot of areas. You know, he's well-versed on the feet, very explosive striker. You know, he's not just a boxer, he's got multiple weapons. And he's also an aggressive grappler with some real upside in submission. And then it kind of comes down to that cardio. You know, is he able to maintain, you know, his game plan? Is he able to fight with that same energy and effectiveness throughout the fight? And that's kind of up in the air. It really truly is, because you've seen glimpses where he can't, and you've seen glimpses where he can. So, you know, you're kind of left guessing, kind of wondering, what are we going to get? So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to favor Costa because I think he's the more dynamic fighter here. But cardio is kind of king too. So I think the way you look at this, and it's tough. It's really tough. I don't know if you can look at playing oh man, yeah. Let's pull them up real quick. So he's 14-4. Been knocked out twice. Never been submitted. And then when we look at the other side, this guy's never been knocked out, but he's been submitted. Oh no, I think Alden's like I said, he looks like a pretty good prospect. Like I said, I'm gonna stay with Costa. I'm not sure. This is one that I don't have a ton of confidence in. I might revisit this, but I'm gonna lean with Costa. Like I said, think he's the more dynamic fighter. He has more paths to victory, I feel like, and we'll just see how it plays out. Like I said, this is a low confidence one for me, and I'll just see what other people think about it. We'll move on. We're not going to spend all day on this singular fight. So let's go back. Our next fight we have on the card is Zachary going against Cedricus Dumas. Let's pull up Zach. Let's pull up Reese. All right. Zach Reese is a long, light-footed striker. He has a brutal side kick, decent boxing, but does tend to throw almost everything with big power. He has good BJJ, but, you know, it kind of comes with that, him being too willing to fight off of his back. And he does have a questionable chin. And then when we look at his opponent, Dumas is these notes are kind of horrid, but anyways, this guy is he's mostly a striker. He walks his opponents down with low volume. Doesn't look very technical from any standpoint. He can get timely takedowns. He seems to be a pretty good athlete, but an average fighter at best. These are like very, very low level notes on this guy, to be honest with you, and they are probably a little outdated. But I think Dumas is one of those guys that he has a good frame. You know, obviously good size with his frame. And then he seems like fairly, I wouldn't say like well-rounded, but he's a guy that offers just enough resistance in all aspects of fighting that he's there. But he's not really like a UFC level guy. He's not really good at any one thing. He has power, but not like extreme power, you know, and he doesn't have great striking technique. You know, I just don't love much about him. He's a guy that's like really, it's hard to stay engaged with his fights. And, yeah, I just don't really like Dumas, his fighting style, and I don't think that he's really that skilled overall. Potential, maybe he has some potential, but I don't think if he hasn't gotten there yet, he's probably not going to get there. And then on the other side, you have a guy that's really just kind of underwhelmed as far as like, you know, the hype and, you know, what people thought he may have been in Zach Reese. Zach Reese is a guy that, you know, as I said, you know, he's long, pretty light-footed, throws some really nice side kicks. And they look devastating. They sound devastating. It sounds like taking a bat and hitting somebody in the, you know, rib cage with it. It sounds awful. And he just has a few holes, you know, like I said, you know, him wanting to fight off his back, if he's taken down, and just put a little too much of everything into everything. He kind of doesn't manage his gassing very well. But for me, the one big difference between these two guys is that Dumas has shown that he's willing to walk out the door. Well, where Reese is a guy that kind of gets pushed out the door. Sometimes Reese's chin doesn't hold up. But that's really to no fault of his own. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that his chin's not that durable is not really his fault. Now, it's hard to really bet on either of these guys when you have a guy that's willing to give up on himself, and then you have a guy that maybe can't withstand the pressure. And if he gets hit, he's KO'd. Now, there's a lot that Zachary's can do to improve his longevity or his durability. Maybe not so much with his chin, but techniques, better footwork, maintaining range, better guard, just, striking techniques that would prevent him from getting hit as often as he does. Those would really increase his chances of winning fights. And he showed I wouldn't say great improvement in his last fight, but he did show some, because I was certain that fight wasn't going to see the cards, and it did. So, in this fight, I'm going to side with Zachary. I think he's the more explosive striker. He's more technical. I just don't know where. Dumas, if he could get takedowns and prevent getting submitted, or not get submitted, I guess, yeah, he could grind out a win here. That's really his only way, is just kind of outlasting, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Reese is able to find a finish in this fight, whether it's knockout or submission. I think that's what happens, but ultimately I side with Zach Reese on this fight. And we're going to move on. Our next bout, we have Jesus Aguilar going against Luis Gurule. This is a fun fight. Let's pull up Jesus. Okie dokie. All right. All right. Jesus is a fairly light-footed striker. Shows decent bounce with some footwork. Striking isn't very conventional. He has a pretty nice backside low and side kick. Seems to make large movements. Commits to his punches, so he has solid power. Takedown defense looks decent enough. He sprawls well and is quick to the guillotine. All right, yeah, and the thing is, this guy's got really high rate of finishing these guillotines. He's good at it. There's something he's really good at. So let's pull up his opponent. If we can. All right. Luis is a fairly light-footed pressure striker. He shows decent bounce with some footwork. Likes to fight off the front foot. Striking looks solid. He has a nice looking teep. Solid combinations in the pocket. He carries his hands low, but does seem to have pretty good head movement. Questions around his takedown defense. Initial sprawl looks decent, but not much after. Seemingly just stands up when taken down. This guy fights with pretty good pace. This one's another one. This is a good fight. This is a fun fight. Now, I do think that Gurule's probably going to... He's probably going to have a little bit of an advantage on the feet. I think that his striking is a little bit, it's cleaner, it's a little more technical, like the teeps. And unless for some reason he shoots the takedown, and I don't see why he would. I don't think he'll have to. The only way I see that happening is if they get into some kind of, they get in the pocket and Jesus is somehow able to land like an overhand right, something that wobbles Gurule or stuns him and causes him to shoot. I really think that Jesus' best chance at winning this fight is by guillotine. I just don't think that's what's going to happen. I really don't. Now, you're not crazy to think, I'm not sure what you could play the Jesus guillotine win, like what kind of line you could get on that. Might not be the worst look. Do I think that's what's going to happen? No, but I do think that's his path to victory in this fight. Not just because it's something he's done a lot, but him being ranked 27th and Gurule being ranked 45th. I think this is Gurule's second fight in the actual UFC. I think he came in on Contender Series, fought O'Day, right? Is that what happened? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a decent scrap and all, but I'm gonna have to favor Gurule. I don't like that on UFC Noche. I don't know why they would do Aguilar like that. But hey, it is what it is. I'm gonna favor Gurule in this fight. I think he's able to edge this one out. Yeah, probably just a decision, if I had to guess, but we'll see. See how it plays out. I think Gurule's got this one, so let's move on to the next fight. The next fight we have Tatiana Suarez going against Amanda Lemos. Lemos, or however you pronounce her name. Another fun fight. Both of these ladies have fought for the belt in recent past. Tatiana didn't really show up too well in her title bout. Amanda Lemos, kind of the same thing. Let's see how they match up. Tatiana. All right. Tatiana is a fairly light-footed striker. She shows a bit of bounce with some footwork, but does tend to be pretty plotty. She carries a high guard. She has decent backside teep and side kick. She pumps a decent right jab. She keeps her head right on the center line. She will look to get the takedown. Like it's, it's like if you get close enough to her for her to snatch a leg or even grab the clinch, it's pretty likely that she's going to try to do that. And she does. She's a very savvy wrestler. Like you'll see that, her ability to get the fight to the ground once she's close enough to you is pretty legit, right? She has solid control, decent ground and pound, a really nice front choke series. And then on the other side, Amanda is a light-footed striker with good bounce, nice footwork, and range management. She has technical switch stance. She is a technical switch stance striker. Wide variety of kicks from both stances. She has a low teep side. I don't know why I did that. But anyways, keeps most of her punches straight, but can be a little bit reckless. So she does have pretty clean striking mostly, but you know, she does like to throw with power, so you will see some wide punches for sure. I think in her title bout, I was watching that, and there was a moment where she was doing pretty good. Was it the title bout? It might have been the Andrade fight. Either way, she was doing pretty good, and she threw this really, really like wide overhand punch and got taken down. Because that kind of messes with your range too. If you're throwing wide and loopy punches, then you got to be closer to hit them, right? And if you're throwing straight punches, you can be a little bit further away, so that helps you maintain your range a little bit. She doesn't have great takedown defense, but she does offer a fair amount of resistance in slapping sequences. So, yeah, I mean, this is obviously a tale of two tapes. You got a striker versus a grappler / wrestler, mostly wrestler, I would say, that has some submission upside. Now, it'll be super, super interesting because I do think that Tatiana is fairly aggressive. But I also think that Amanda Lemos' ability to maintain range is pretty high level. It's pretty good. So I don't know. I may be on the wrong side of this one, guys. I do think that I don't know. It's super, super tough. I'm going to go with Amanda. I think Amanda can win this fight. I think if she can maintain range, hit her with some big shots, you know, not only does she have a chance to knock her out, but I think the more she hits her, because let's look at, I want to see Suarez's record. I know she's got a good record, but I want to see who she fought. Jessica Andrade got her in a guillotine. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. You know, getting Alexa Grasso, she's pretty plotty, though. So I'm not... I don't know. My thing is when I look at this, the things that I see is that, one, she's never really fought anyone like Amanda. She's never really fought anyone that has the actual technical striking combined with the footwork, with the ability to maintain range the way that Amanda is. I think that Amanda does have a pretty good ability to maintain that range. And she does it with conviction. Like, she does it like you can see that she's actually is trying to maintain range. And that's one thing I really do like about her style. So, but there is a world, obviously, that, you know, she could get snatched up in a choke. I just think the fight starts on the feet. Amanda's going to be able to hit her with some punches, maintain that range. And eventually she's just going to, you know what I mean? She's going to kind of demoralize Tatiana. That's what I think. I mean, honestly, look back. I mean, this probably isn't even fair. I probably shouldn't even say it. But if you literally look at Tatiana's, man, and how he came over from Bellator or wherever, right? And he fought Mario. It's going to be, I think it's going to be kind of similar. I think it's going to be similar to that fight. Stylistically, it's kind of the same thing. You have two kind of wrestle grapplers style fighters going against an opponent that is going to use movement based, and try to maintain the range and pick them apart with punches. Now, the one thing that could hurt Amanda in this fight is that she does show a willingness to try to land with power and maybe not stick to a game plan of just kind of outpointing, maintaining range. And so that could come into effect for sure. And if it does, now you're looking at a real possibility of Tatiana being able to close that distance, get Amanda to the mat, and then ultimately submit her. I want to look at Amanda's. Let's see. Was submitted by Verna. Wasn't submitted by Mackenzie Dern. Yep. That's where I'm going to go. I think she took a real hard look at herself in the mirror after the title fight. And I think that she said, hey, got to improve these things. Now, granted, Tatiana could have done the same thing. But I just think, again, stylistically, not quite the same thing. And I don't think she's going to be able to make those type of improvements on the feet to be right there with Amanda. So I'm going to take Amanda. I think Amanda wins this fight. By either KO or decision. And yeah, let's move on. Let's look at the next fight. Who do we have up next? Next we have Claudio Puelles going against Joaquim Silva. Okay. Claudio. Oh, I did not mean to put a Y in there. Okay. Claudio Puelles. This guy is a light-footed striker. He has good bounce. He has a bladed stance, decent range management. He fights behind solid backside kicks when at range, and he will counter with his hands. Seems to be a pretty aggressive transitional grappler with a nasty transition to a knee bar. Kind of who he is, and I don't know why I have it in my head that this guy's a butt scooter. Maybe he is, you know what I mean? Because he does kind of like to grapple, but let's look at his opponent. Joaquim. Fairly light-footed striker. He has decent bounce and solid footwork and some range management. Striking is decent. He has a high guard, solid kicks at range. Boxing is a bit loose. Has good power. This guy is a bit low volume. Sound grappler with a bit of submission upside. Let's look at these two on paper. Yeah, both those guys were, Dan and Ferreira, both those guys are really, really solid strikers. And Dan hits hard. Let's see. I'm just kind of trying to evaluate, some of the people they fought and how they won. This is a tough one, too. mean, this guy's something BJJ, right? Neto BJJ. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how these guys, how they match up physically. You know, I'll be definitely looking to see how they look next to each other. And see what other people think about this fight. You know, the butt scooter thing. I don't know. This guy's got three KO losses. Never been submitted. I don't know. I would probably be trying to stay away from this mostly. And maybe looking to play, you know, what's the line on the Claudio, you know, knee bar, you know, because he could certainly get there. I just think the way he transitions to it, by the time he hits it, he typically doesn't really leave a lot of time to defend. And I don't really see either of these guys being crazy good on the feet, you know. Puelles isn't like a great striker. I think, you know, when he's at range, you know, the kicks and everything look pretty nice. He counters okay. But it's just like, it's a mentality thing, I think, for him, is why I don't really love him on the feet. I think he looks okay on the feet. It's a mentality thing. And then with Joaquim, it's not a ton of output. He doesn't throw a lot out there. You know, boxing's a bit loose, a bit wide. So I'd be looking at the Claudio knee bar. I don't know that it's like super duper likely, but I do think that's, you know, it's a path for him for sure. You know, he wants to, yeah, and maybe just fight doesn't go. I don't know. I don't know how you look at this. We're just, be careful with that one. Be careful with that one. I want to say Puelles is going to be able to find a way to win this fight. And that's probably what, you know, looks like it's a pick'em fight almost, you know, minus 190. When I look at the age, 39, I think this other guy's quite a bit older, 36 or so. Yeah, I'm going to go with Claudio on this. I think he wins. I'd be looking at the knee bar, or fight doesn't go, or just flat out stay away from it. I think it's a volatile fight for sure. Next fight, we got Jose Medina going against Duško Todorović. Yeah, we'll pull him up. Medina, there's not a lot on him because there's just not. Medina doesn't offer much. Okay. Jose Medina, this guy is a flat-footed striker. He has a hard time getting out of the way of being hit. Just simply, you know, he's very plotty, very stationary. You throw a punch, he's going to be there. You throw a kick, he's going to be there. Toughness and durability are the only way this guy is going to win. That's basically what I have on him. You know, this guy seems to be very, very tough. Too tough for his own good. And pretty durable. Yeah, he was knocked out in his last fight by a pretty brutal knee from, you know, somebody I know I wouldn't want to take a knee from. So, but he has shown really, really good durability in basically all the fights we've seen him in. So, if he can take everything you got to offer and you're just basically dying and gasping for air, and he's able to fall on top of you and submit you, or getting ground and pound TKO or something like that, yeah, I mean, he could do it. But he will be going against Duško. Let's pull him up. Duško is a light-footed striker. He has technical kickboxing, solid kicks, straight punches. He does carry his hands a little bit low. He will use a cage push in wrestling to gain control. Seems to fade a little bit, and he does kind of have a questionable chin. And, you know, he lived through the last fight, so a little bit more confidence in him. I think technically, like skill for skill, this guy's way better, right? He's just way better. And should be like a huge favorite. But there's a world that Jose somehow squeaks us out. I think Duško's the right side. I think it's really the only side. But my honest way of looking at this fight is it like over or like fight reach round 2 is probably pretty likely. I think the fight reaching round 2 is probably very, very likely. And I'll be on the side of Duško, but again, there's a world where if Duško, you know, fades out in the second, third round, and Jose's able to just fall on him, and you know, it could happen. It really, really could, because that guy's durability that's his best trait. But let's move on. We have another UFC newcomer in Santiago Luna going against Quang Li. I'm not sure how I feel about this fight yet, but let's pull up Santiago. All right. Santiago Luna, this guy is a slightly light-footed pressure striker. He shows some bounce, but tends to be pretty plotty. Boxing is loose. Carries a high guard. He keeps his head on the center line. Pretty aggressive, closing the gap. Legit wrestling ability. Really nice body lock throws. Questions around his control, but does seem to float okay and use moderate ground and pound. And on the other side, we have Lee. Quang Li is a flat-footed boxer, more of a counter striker. He has a wide stance, he's open to leg kicks. Has a nice high kick, power seems solid. He extends himself throwing combos, and questions around his takedown defense. So these notes on him are clearly a little bit outdated, because the reality is I've changed the way I take notes. My focal points and all that have changed. To some extent, some of them are the same, but like the way I word it and whatnot has been improved, in my opinion, and the way I perceive it. But yeah, this is another tough fight. Some of these fights are so tough because they're people that aren't as well known. They haven't had a lot of UFC experience, level competitions. Of question, things you just haven't seen. You know, something about fighters is like, you can have a guy that's a great hammer and a bad nail. We've all heard it, right? They're a good hammer, but they're not a very good nail. When you get to the UFC, you have guys that can do what you do. They can grapple, they can strike, you know, they can do a lot of things you do, and they can meet you where you beat a lot of other people. And when that happens, now they're dealing with adversity. And when you've never seen a fighter deal with adversity, you don't really know what kind of fighter they truly are, you know? It's like a friendship. You just don't know till you've been through it. So, let's pull up old Quang Li real quick and see. I don't know. I think his record kind of tells me a story that so the story that Quang Bang Lee's record tells me, just looking at it and seeing who he's fought, and Gastelum Milanos is a pretty high level striker. I think he comes from a Muay Thai background, but you know, he's got a glaring hole in his grappling. It's been there all along. You know, he showed a little bit of improvement in his previous fight, and I kind of thought, well, you know, maybe he's cleaned some of that up, and then here comes Quang Bang, and there it is, holes right there. So he done that. Long, you know, I picked him to lose his last fight, which he won. Or did he? No, he lost. He did lose that fight, right? I think he did. And he seems like a decent fighter, all in all, but, you know, his striking's a bit wide, this, that, the other. He lost that fight to a strike, which he's got some pretty good power. Chris Gutierrez. Another Muay Thai striker, more of a kickboxer, more of a technical kickboxer, uses a lot of kicks. Fought pretty good in that fight, but, you know, that was his UFC debut. Went to the cards with Chris Gutierrez, which looked pretty good for him. But he lost that fight. So, what it tells me is he's not a super high level striker. He's decent, but he's not super high level. And it also tells me that these fights that he's winning, or won, are against lower level grapplers. And that's not what he's meaning here. I think he's meaning a guy that is going to be right on par with him with the striking. Maybe not quite as good, but kind of right there with him. And he's going to be willing to fight in the striking realm, and he's going to look to get his takedowns. And I think that, you know, it's a hard fight to predict. But, you know, I think even in the notes, when you look and see that I have questions around his takedown defense, I'll see if I can dig some stuff up after the fact, like after I make everything I'm making today, but see if I can find anything that kind of helps me feel a little bit more confident in the Santiago side. But I think, you know, UFC Noche coming in 6-0, 21 years old. You know, surely this guy is being made to look good. But it's a close fight. I'm going to take Santiago to win this fight. And I think looking at the over is not the worst idea. We're going to move on. We have Alex Hernandez going against Diego Ferreira. Let's pull these guys up. All right, Alex Hernandez is a light-footed striker. He has good movement, but poor range management. He's an explosive striker. He has a nasty body kick. Boxing is pretty clean, but he does have a tendency to throw everything with power, extending himself. Can be taken down, but he works to get up. This guy fades later, so he's a guy that fades. Like, he'll fight through it. He's not gonna like totally gas out, but you're gonna see that he fades. And then on the other side of it, we have Diego. Okay, Diego Ferreira is a light-footed striker. He has good movement, but the guy can get pressed back. So he kind of lacks that technical footwork, you know, doesn't create the angles and use lateral movement the way he should. Solid front kick at range. Boxing is basic, a bit loose. He does have a powerful overhand right. Solid takedown defense, can be taken down. Very active grappler. He transitions and scrambles pretty well, and he's dangerous on the mat. They've done really good on these fights. This is a near even fight too, and that's how I feel when I'm thinking about it. It seems that Hernandez is kind of on the right side of things. He's kind of got a little win streak going for him. Splits for it. Unanimous strikes. Super tough fight. Dang, Ferreira. This dude's 4 years old already. This is a tough fight for real. Both these guys are good. And then when I think back to the Rebecca fight, that's kind of what this one makes me think of just a bit, because if like he faded in that fight, that's why he ended up winning it, right? It's a really tough fight to call. Let me look at Ferreira's notes again. Light-footed striker, good movement, can get pressed back. Solid front kick at range. Boxing is basic, a bit loose. He has powerful overhand right. He has solid takedown defense. I don't think Hernandez is gonna look to take it to the ground. He's probably gonna be he's more explosive. He's gonna be the a little bit cleaner striker. Definitely I think he hits harder, regularly. Let's go back to Hernandez real quick and see. I'm just trying to decipher all this. I mean, you think this goes to the card? I like Hernandez, but let's see how many times these guys have been to the cards. 12 times. Who submitted him? Moicano. How many times has this guy been in the card? 10 times. Well, there's a lot of volatility in this fight. I mean, you don't know if it's going long, going short, going... Grant Dawson. The over 1.5. I don't know. I kind of like Hernandez. I like his explosiveness, and I like that he's the younger fighter of the two. So I'm going to side with Hernandez, but this is super low confidence. I think that Diego's proven to be kind of a dog. He can kind of weather the storm, and he can come back late and win fights. It's hard to find an angle in this because, a part of me wants to say, like fight starts round 2, maybe over 1.5 even. But Hernandez has a real ability to... I mean, both these guys have real abilities to finish fights. So it's volatile. It's a hard fight to predict. But I'm going to side with Hernandez, and I do kind of like the over in my head. So I'll look at the weigh-ins and everything, and I'll go from there. But as of right now, I'm going to go with the Hernandez side with a ever so slight lean. And then I'm going to move on. Okay. Next bout, we have Kelvin Gastelum going against Dustin Stoltzfus. And I don't know. I seen a report earlier that Kelvin missed weight again. Surprise, surprise, right? Let's pull him up. Kelvin. Kelvin Gastelum. This guy is a light-footed striker. He's mainly boxing. Fights with good pace and pressure. He has an in-and-out style. Solid inside low kick at range. He has a crisp 1-2. Strings together combinations in the pocket with good speed and power. Carries his hands low. Sprawls well, but doesn't offer much off his back. Okay. And... all right, Stoltzfus. Dustin is a plodding striker. He's a bit flat-footed. Has decent kicks at range, front, side, and low. Tends to throw punches wide, most effective in the pocket or a brawl. Has some takedown ability with offensive grappling, but he does lack defensive grappling and gives up his back. This guy doesn't take punches very well. But he lived through his last fight. I do want to mention that because I swore that guy was going to get knocked out in his last fight. It was against Ruzaboyev, I think. I thought for sure he was going to get knocked out in that fight. And boy, he was taking some punches, and he just kept on keeping on. Now, something that I do think I missed, though, is that Ruzaboyev had gone up in weight in that fight, I believe. And so that might have played a role. Let's pull up Kevin real quick. Kevin, yeah, he's got 5 knockouts, never been knocked out. That dude's a tough son of a gun, for real. He can take some big hits, for real. Who's he been? I want to see who he's been submitted to. Some pretty high level guys, Jack Hermansson's a pretty good grappler. Sean Brady, elite grappler. Weidman was a really, really good wrestler, so like him getting an arm triangle is not the most surprising thing. Let's look at Dustin. Two knockouts, 2 submission losses. I mean, I'm going to side with Gastelum. I think he could... I mean, he could potentially knock Stoltzfus out. I think he's just a dog. I don't think Stoltzfus is going to be able to... I don't think he's going to be able to submit him. So, I'm going to lean with Kelvin on this. I think Kelvin wins this fight. And... probably knockout. I'm going to go with knockout, but... it doesn't have to be. It can be by decision. In our next fight, we got Jared Gordon going against Rafa Garcia. Alright. That's not Rafa, that's Rafa. He's Mexican. Sorry. Okay, Jared Gordon going against Rafa Garcia. Jared Gordon. Let's see. Jared Gordon is a flat-footed pressure striker. He has solid boxing. He uses low kicks and straight left at range. Enters a pocket with a straight left, to an overhand right, and then a left hook. You know, it's a combination he really likes to throw. Utilizes an effective high guard. He has good volume. Takedown defense looks solid. He has a strong base. Takedown ability. He has some takedown ability, but lacks top control. This guy's just a dog, you know. Like, that's just who he is. Now, on the other side, we got Rafa. Rafa Garcia. This guy is an average striker at best. Wide looping shots. He's flat-footed, throws hard, pressures opponent with strikes and takedown threat. Decent takedowns, but little control. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here because, you know, stylistically, this is another one where I look at it, you know, you got UFC Noche. It should be kind of like this is... and it's supposed to be like Mexican independence or something like that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that's what it is. But, you know, I don't feel like Rafa's in a position to win this fight. Not really. I don't think so. I think he's in a position to lose this fight. I'm going with Jared Gordon. I think Jared Gordon wins this fight. You know, the over. I like the over quite a bit. You know, two tough, durable guys. You know, neither of them are what I would call like phenomenal, like technical strikers. You know, they're, you know, well enough, I guess, but you're not going to be overly impressed with their striking skills. But this is MMA. You know, it's not all about one skill. You know, it's about being able to blend all of them together. And you know, I think they're both good MMA fighters, and I just think that Jared Gordon is going to edge him in just about everything. You know, Rafa's probably got the better wrestling. if I had to guess, he's probably got the better pure wrestling, but Gordon's such a dog. You know, I think that he's going to outpace, and, you know, probably win this. And so I would be looking at the over. That's what I would look at. On to the next fight we have. Oh, this is the coming out party for David Martinez, okay? So if you made it to this part of the video, I'm going to say this right now. I have a hot take on this. One, go ahead, again, like the video, subscribe to the channel. You're doing yourself a favor, I promise you. Now, Rob Font is been known to be a good fighter for quite some time at this point. Ranked number 18th. Now, David Martinez, this guy, I said this before, I'll say it again. This guy came in on Contender Series last year. Let's pull him up. This guy came in on Contender Series last year. October of 2024. Okay? He fought one time in the UFC. And I'm not going to say too much about his opponent. That is what it is, right? We're not breaking down his opponent. We take those things into account, but when I've done tape on this guy for the Contender Series, I took one look at him and I was like, this guy's in my opinion, this guy's a legit contender, like a potential UFC champion type of fighter. I firmly believe that this guy is the real deal. And some of these Mexican fighters that have been fighting in, like, what is it, Combat Global, or some Combate Global or whatever. Dude, some of these people, like, we just filmed a couple guys on Contender Series a couple weeks ago, and those guys are pretty legit too. David Martinez is the real deal, guys. If you don't know the name now, you're looking at a future UFC star, and we're going to see it. Okay. That's my hot take. David Martinez, future champion. Now, let's break down the fight. We have Rob Font on one side. Let's pull him up. All right. I don't believe there's a 5 in his name. All right, Rob Font. He is a flat-footed pressure striker. He likes to walk forward, doesn't show much bounce. He keeps a high guard, pumps a nice left jab, clean 1-2, good power. Takedown defense leaves a bit to be desired. But he does have a decent sprawl. He stuffs ahead, and his get-it game looks pretty good. Will threaten submissions and continue to stuff the head to work back to his feet. Okay. Rob Font is a pretty good fighter. He's good at what he does. He's good boxing. He's kind of known for it. He's consistent, nice, solid, stiff left jab. Is it left? Not the point. But yeah, he blends his strikes together pretty well. He does offer a little bit more. Like, he offers some combinations. He has a pretty nice right uppercut he likes to throw. But that's kind of who he is, right? And then now we have David Martinez. Let's pull this guy up. David Martinez. And I had notes on him from Contender Series a year ago. Like I said, all that stuff, verbiage, everything, the way I look at it, all that stuff's changed. I gone through, I watched more film of this guy, and I updated all of it. So what you have with David Martinez, this guy is a very light-footed striker. He has good bounce, lots of movement, nice footwork, and maintains range pretty well. He fights with a bladed stance and utilizes a kick-heavy attack, lightning fast kicks to all levels. He carries a high guard. More of a counter striker with his hands, but does have pretty clean boxing with fast hands. Seems to defensively wrestle and grapple at a pretty high level. And that's, when you put all this stuff together, like I said, it's not about being great at any one thing. It's about being able to blend this stuff. And this guy is able to blend all this stuff really, really, really well. Okay? What you'll see is that this guy is a striker through and through. It's kind of like Crotty. Wide bladed stance, kind of in and out. But, you know, you can see again, kind of like Lemos, that he's really trying to maintain this range. And what he does is whenever his opponents get close enough to him to grapple him or try to wrestle him or whatever, what he does is he usually beats them to the punch. So he'll engage in that wrestle before they can, and he'll get leverage. And he'll use that to then separate and then go back to work. Okay? So you're always going to have the questions about level of competition and all these things, and those are valid. It's very valid. But you're going to see this guy's the real freaking deal. And if he can continue to do this and show that he can do this against his opposition as he progresses in the UFC and moves up the ranks, I mean, like I said, you're literally looking at a future like UFC star. And not just that, it's like the evolution of the fight game, in my opinion, because once you start to integrate more fighters like this into the UFC, I may be wrong about this. This may be wrong, but I do feel like you're going to see a swing in like the heavy grapplers being champions, and you're going to start seeing people like this that are able to maintain that range and meet them in the grappling. You know what I mean? Like beat them to that punch and then go back to where, you know, like I said, he'll engage in it to get control of the situation, and then he'll separate and go back to work. So, I'm taking David Martinez. There ain't no doubt. Now, I'm not picking knockout or anything like that. I don't believe Font's ever been knocked out. Do I think he can be? Yeah, I do. And I think, if you know what I mean, I would love for David Martinez. Not for the sake of Font, you know what I mean? Because obviously I like Font or whatever. I don't have anything against Font. But just for the hype and everything for David Martinez, for, you know, everyone to kind of see who this guy is. Yeah, I would love to see him knock out Font. But, you know, Font's a tough dude. And I'm gonna side with David Martinez in this. I really believe that David Martinez is gonna win this fight pretty convincingly. And it's funny because now it's a near even, and it wasn't. I know it wasn't when this line opened. I know it wasn't that close. But yeah, your underdog David Martinez, coming out party dude's gonna show everyone who he is. Okay, keep your eye on this guy. He's a real deal. Now we're moving on to the main event. Diego Lopes going against John Silva. Okay. Pretty highly anticipated fight we have here. And for good reason. Both these guys are fan favorites. People love these guys. Okay, so let's pull up Diego. Diego Lopes is a slightly light-footed striker. He does show a bit of bounce, but tends to be pretty ploddy. He carries a high guard. He has a stiff left jab, but everything else is pretty wide. He does possess pretty good power. He keeps his head on the center line, but he's pretty durable and tough. Decent kicks from range, opportunistic grappler with and he's a very high-level BJJ guy. Very high level. And then when we look at the other side, we have Silva. All right, Silva. John Silva, here he is. Fairly light-footed striker. He uses measured pressure, a bit of bounce with range management. He throws snappy backside kicks, side, deep, and high. He's an explosive striker that counters pretty well. Likes to counter with the check left hook, right cross, and he also will time knees as they enter. Does that pretty well. He does carry his hands low. Not always, but he does have a tendency to carry his hands low. Can be taken down, but looks strong in grappling and clinch sequences. You know, he has been a good hammer. That note's kind of from before. But, yeah, I mean, we haven't seen him deal with too much adversity at this point. And trust me, I like Diego as much as the next guy. I don't think that Diego is as good as Silva. I really don't. I think he's a better grappler. But he seems pretty willing to stay on the feet. And while I think he has good power, and there's certainly a world because Silva carries his hands low, we haven't seen him deal with that adversity. There's certainly a world where Lopes is able to knock out Silva. That's very, very feasible. But we haven't seen that yet, and it's hard for me to lean on that side of it. I think that Silva is going to be able to counter this guy, hit him with some really big shots. I do see Silva finishing this fight probably by knockout. If he's able to submit him, what he does is, you see this with, is it the ninja choke? I'm not sure. I think it's a ninja choke. You see a lot of these people starting to utilize that ninja choke when people try to engage in the wrestling, and they'll pull that up and threaten that. And it's really a threat more to defend. But, you've seen more and more where people are getting closer to finishing this, and some, even have. They've been able to utilize that technique and be able to, submit their opponent from that position. So I don't think that that's the most likely case here, when you're going against a guy like Lopes that's like very high level grappler, probably one of the better grapplers in the UFC. But I still think that Silva's striking instincts and stuff are just superior to Diego's. I really do. That's what I think. I think he wins this fight. Probably by knockout, especially since it's a 5-round fight. He's a pretty big favorite. And I don't know if I agree with the minus 245 necessarily. I don't know if it's like, 2.5 to 1 or whatever, but the thing with Lopes is I don't know, has he been knocked? He's got 7 losses. He's been knocked TKO'd at least. Let's see. Yeah. I'm just going to go, I side with Silva. I think he wins a fight, probably gets a knockout. But again, these are two very high-level fighters. Lopes definitely has his path to victory as well. So, like I said, don't really necessarily agree with the line per se. But I do agree with him being the favorite. He's my favorite. I think he wins his fight. And we're looking at, a title contender. That's what you're looking at as a title contender. So, those are my breakdowns of UFC Noche. Those are some of my predictions. And basically what I'll be doing now is I'll be looking at some of the weigh-ins. I'll be going in and diving into what other people think about it. And we'll just go from there. So, enjoy the fights, everybody. Remember, do yourself a favor. Like the video. That's for me. Subscribe. That's for you, okay? When you subscribe, you're doing yourself a favor. Because there's no other place that is going to give you the breakdowns that I give you right here at Correlation Nation. Good luck, everybody. Peace out.